But we are talking a lot of Capitals this morning because they not only have the best record in hockey at 41-13-7, they've just added an all-star in Kevin Shattenkirk. And joining us to give us a little more insight, he writes the Fancy Stats blog for the Washington Post, co-hosts Crashing the Net, which you can listen to Saturdays at 8 a.m. on 106.7 The Fan. It's our buddy Neil Greenberg. Hey, Neil.
Good morning, guys. How's it going?
What's up, bud?
So tell us about Shattenkirk. Most of us don't know anything about him.
It's a huge deal. Shattenkirk is one of the better offensive defensemen in the NHL. He's good in transition. He's quick. He's good with the puck. He's really great on the power play. He was the second leading scorer on the Blues. He had 42 points. Tarasenko had 56. I mean, the guy. This is the move a championship team makes, and I think it was just as important for Washington to get him as it was to keep him from the Pittsburgh Penguins and the New York Rangers, two teams that they're going to probably have to meet in the playoffs, go through in the playoffs, two teams that also had interest. And the Caps were the Cup favorite before the trade. They have to be even more of a favorite now. I mean, everything's going right for them, and they add a guy like Shattenkirk, and it's pretty remarkable. But give credit to the organization for going all in.
I'm looking at McClellan's quotes, the GM for the Capitals, from about a week ago, where he said, if we could upgrade on the fringes, we might do it. But like you said, this is not a fringe move. This is trading for an all-star. This is a guy who's going to add to an already deep defense. And was part of it because Niskanen went down with an injury a few games ago? I can't remember exactly what game it was. It's 2 or 3 games ago. Did that really cement it for McClellan that he needed to add more defense, especially if one of his guys goes down?
It has to be, because your top pair of Carl Alsner and John Carlson are fine, but then after that you're looking at Taylor Chorney, Dmitry Orlov, Nate Schmidt, Aaron Ness. None of those guys are top 4 guys. So Shattenkirk certainly is. I mean, he's a top pair defenseman. And then once Niskanen gets healthy, that right side, Carlson, Niskanen, and Shattenkirk, is the best in the NHL. And one of those guys is going to have a similar, I don't want to say breakout season, but is going to have, if you remember a couple of years ago, Mike Green was demoted to the third-line pair. He had a really solid season because he wasn't playing against the top competition anymore. He's playing against much lesser players. It freed him up a little bit. One of those 3 is going to be in the same situation, and if it's Shattenkirk, who's already shown he can produce at a pretty high level, playing 19 minutes a night, he could be even more offensively productive if he's given some softer situations to play in. But yeah, Niskanen not being available really does put a hole in that right side, but not anymore with Shattenkirk.
Neil, you mentioned this is a blocker type move. Keeping Shattenkirk away from the Pens and the Rangers is especially important. How much hand-wringing is going on in those front offices that Shattenkirk is here in D.C. and that they didn't acquire him?
Well, it's probably you have to. The trade in of itself, I don't think was anything another team couldn't have matched. I mean, Zach Sanford is a good prospect. He's probably going to be a really good NHLer at some point. The first-round pick's a low first-round pick considering how well the Capitals are doing. And I'm not even going to try to figure out the next component of the trade. It's really convoluted depending on what Shattenkirk does and where the pick is. But at worst, it's going to be a third-round pick, which has a relatively low chance of becoming a bona fide NHL player. So the package itself, I think, was something that could have been matched perhaps, but the Blues obviously have a trading relationship with the Caps. TJ Oshie came over earlier in McClellan's career. So I think that they're looking at the rest of the league has to be looking around and saying, okay, the elephant in the room just got bigger. Perhaps we see more trades at the deadline, and it actually helps the sellers because they can hold these other teams over a barrel, knowing that they have to improve a great deal to get to where the Capitals are.
Neil, basically that conditional second rounder in 2019, if the Caps get to the Eastern Conference Finals or if Shattenkirk re-signs with the Caps, if either of those happens, that pick becomes a second rounder.
Well, no, they don't have a second rounder. I think what happens is it becomes 2 rounds later than what the Caps get. I'll be honest, I was up last night around midnight trying to figure it out. I gave up. But it is a conditional pick. You're right.
I'm reading it right from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch.
All right, because that when that was reported last night, I know our beat writer Isabel Kashudian was
Maybe
saying
that's
that they didn't have a second-round pick to
Okay.
give, and it changed. But in any event, even if it was a second-round pick, let's say it was, a second-round pick has about a 20% chance of playing 100 games in the NHL level. So even if it was a second-round pick, it's not a lot to give up. And that's typically the commodity for trades at the trade deadlines. You go back a couple of years, you'll see that teams are pretty willing to throw around second-round picks. My concern is that the Caps are truly in a win-now mode. They don't have a lot of draft picks. I think they won't have a draft pick until the fourth round this year, after having given up their first-round pick for Shattenkirk. So they really are all in. This is it, YOLO. I mean, this is everything for Washington, and be curious to see how far it could take them.